Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another round of the Sage Rutty Tele. This week, we're talking about what to do with extra cash. I'm so glad you're able to join me. Another beautiful day in Rochester, always blue skies. And I have to say, this is probably one of the most common questions that I get asked about. So I'm excited to talk about it. I think that's pretty interesting and definitely a good problem to have. So quick agenda for today. We'll talk about the ground rules a little bit. Then I'll dive into a checklist of what things are kind of tossed out there as potentials, of what to do with the extra money. I'll go into some considerations on how do you filter that down. And then I want to talk a little bit about irregular cash flow and some strategies around that. So ground rules here. Like I said, most common question I've been getting, especially recently. I think it's partially to do with our current situation around COVID, right? There's a lot of vacation funds that have been well funded and not able to use. So extra cash on hand or things like the stimulus package, that sort of stuff. So I have extra money. What are the best things that I can be doing with it? I like to note, not trying to sell anything, not trying to get your extra money. Just it's a question that people have been asking. So I'm happy to hopefully give some guidance. And I always like to remind people this should be goals based. So I'll mention maybe this or maybe that. It typically depends on what your goals are. So I guess I'll start with the classic situation. I've been getting calls and emails, and it goes something along the lines of, "Hey, Craig, I have an extra $5,000 from X, Y, or Z. Do you think that I should be putting it in an emergency fund and paying off debt or paying off my mortgage or doing 401k or, there's a million other things or at least 10 other things that I could quickly think of to toss on the list here, right? There's more than just this. So how do we filter that down? How do we prioritize it? And how do we know what's going to be appropriate? If you do a quick Google search, there's a lot of opinions on this, and they don't all align, but there are some agreed upon principles. And I want to start with that of like, what's the baseline that most financial professionals say, these are a few good things to definitely try and tackle. The first is a little bit of a joke, don't add cup holders to a sinking ship. Don't be worried about what should I do with extra cash flow this month if on a normal month you're moving backwards, right? If you're continuously adding revolving debt, but now you have a little cash in your pocket, but you're still dealing with running with your budget running at a negative every month, you need to get kind of the household cash flow in order before you worry about, oh, I have extra cash to invest or something like that. Make sure that your budget is cleaned up before you dive into this. The second is an emergency fund. Almost universally, having an emergency fund is a good idea, right? Making sure that you have enough funded, if God forbid something happened to you, you don't have to take on extra debt in the midst of an emergency. So the target is 3 to 6 months of what your expenses are. So take a look at realistically, how much do I need coming into the household to keep things afloat? Put about 3 to 6 months. If you're in a double income household, and if you have pretty low fixed expenses, maybe you'll need 3 months. If you're a single income household, maybe you need to err closer to the side of 6 months. Third is paying off high interest debt. So this is loosely defined as 7% or more. So if you have high interest student loans, or if you have credit cards or that sort of stuff, if you're paying off a boat or an RV or something like that, paying off a four-wheeler, right? Typically, you're dealing with higher interest rate debt, and paying off high interest rates is a guaranteed return, right? I can try and seek the market and do an investment and hopefully get a return, or I can pay off my credit card and definitely avoid paying 17%, right? So that is a little bit of a no-brainer. And then free money, right? Anytime that there's like a match through your company or something like that, most experts agree at least be doing enough to take advantage of that. I should note that number 3 and number 4 are a bit of a controversy in my industry, right? There's some argument on which one to do first. I'm a big fan of tackling debt before worrying about saving and trying to get the free money, but the case could be made in the other direction. It's much more of a comfort level on which one of those you should do in which order. But certainly if you can, doing both of them makes perfect sense. So this is kind of the baseline. And most people say, okay, well, I have that stuff in order. Now I have extra money. Now what, right? What do I do with extra money if I've already covered an emergency fund? I'm out of debt. And I'm doing enough to get at least the free money through my 401k. What next? So here's the list that kind of comes to mind for me. Taking advantage of HSA accounts. If you've attended any of the Tele before, if you go to our website and look at some of the past ones, you know I'm a huge fan of HSAs. I won't go into the full detail, but just knowing the best tax advantage available out there is through the HSA account, and you have the ability to be investing it, maxing that out is really, really positive. Second is making sure you're on track for retirement. So there's a lot of rules of thumb of, okay, you need to be saving 15% or 12% or, X percent of your salary. Run the figures and figure out exactly how much you need to be on track, right? Don't just generically say, oh, I'm just doing X dollars into my retirement account, or I'm just going to max out no matter what. That's great, but it's much better to say, okay, I know I need to be putting away exactly 14% of my pay every paycheck to put me on track for retiring at 62 then, and that's my goal, right? Know exactly the dollars that you need to put in. If you want to overfund that, that's great, but just at least know the context. Third is prepare for major upcoming expenses. So if in February, when we're recording this, you have an extra $5,000, but in April, you're going to have to replace your car or, do something like that, or the roof is leaking, right? Don't treat it as I have excess money now, but I'm going to need to go into debt later on to cover it, or I'm going to be in a pinch later on. It's good to be preparing for upcoming expenses. Fourth, and often overlooked, I'm a big fan of investing in yourself. So opportunities to improve your value, whether it means more schooling or taking one-off classes or just finding ways to make yourself more valuable and maybe generate some extra income, so that if that's investing in like a side hustle. I've been hearing a lot more people investing in real estate and doing rentals or trying to flip houses, that sort of stuff. It's a good spot to spend money in an investment that you have control over. There's no doubt about that. And an investment in knowledge is one that typically yields some positive returns. Fifth on that list, right, is education funding. I noted on here, decide up front how much you want to be helping. If it's helping children with their education, decide on the front end how much you want to do that. It goes along with number 2 here, right, that get yourself on track for retirement. With education funding, figure out, okay, I have 3 kids. I want to be covering 50% of what their tuition is, or I want to be covering all of it, or figure out exactly how much you need, and then back into a plan that says, okay, that's $200 a month until they're getting to college age, or I need to be putting away a total of $100,000 per child to be in that spot. Don't just willy-nilly be throwing money in. Typically it ends up that you're not in a spot to fund as much as you had anticipated. And then I know plenty of parents have taken on extra debt, and that puts you in a little bit of a pinch. So figure out a plan and then decide, okay, I can be funding that plan. Paying down low interest debt falls next. So that's things like your mortgage, or if it's a loan that's below 7%. Nowadays, it's pretty common to see a lot of things that are below that. After that is after-tax investments. So this is going into like a brokerage account. This is if I'm already maxing out my 401k or maxing out a Roth IRA. Then kind of all of the tax advantage vehicles are starting to disappear on you. You're kind of forced into an after-tax investment. I want to go back because I think that I skipped it. Consideration for high earners. IRA accounts have phase-out limits based on what your income is. So if your income for 2021 exceeds $208,000 as a married couple, you can't fund a Roth IRA directly. But what you do have access to is funding what they call backdoor Roth IRA. If you're in that spot and and that's something interesting to you, just reach out to me. I'll give you the lowdown on things. But once you've kind of maxed those out, or as we talked about, goals-based investing, if you're trying to invest for something that's not retirement or not healthcare expenses or not college, don't use an HSA, a 401k, or like a 529 account. Use an after-tax account because you don't want to put yourself into a penalty period for it. So often I see people saying, okay, well, I'm maxing out all these accounts and now I'm in a spot where I need it for a down payment on a house and I can't access it without paying a penalty. So just something to keep in mind. You can, after that point, if you're doing all of those, increase your cushion, right? Increase what your comfort level is in having cash on hand, or start accelerating your goals, saying, okay, I was on track for retirement at 62 like I wanted. Well, if I start increasing my savings into that area, maybe it's 61 or 60 or 59. So something to, start looking at, okay, I have a mapped out realistic plan. What happens if I start accelerating that? Excuse me. Things to keep in mind: you cannot borrow your way through retirement. I see it so often that parents really, really want to be sure that they're covering college expenses for their child and they're sacrificing their retirement to do so. You can't borrow your way through retirement, but you can borrow to pay for an education. I recognize it's not ideal, but it's especially not ideal. And I think your kids would thank you if you're not having to move into their basement so that you can retire. Second is understanding taxability. This is what I just talked about. Use the appropriate account. Don't use a 401k if it's for something that's not retirement. Don't use life insurance if you're using it to try and fund retirement or try and fund some other expenses. Life insurance is really great for covering the risk of passing away. So use the appropriate vehicle for what it is. And the other side of that coin is when it is for a goal that there's a tax advantage vehicle for, use it, right? Don't save for retirement and after tax account when you could be doing it in a Roth and it's all tax-free growth. So that's the double-edged sword there. Third, I have been seeing a lot of investing euphoria going on. People have seen the returns on their statements and said, this is phenomenal. I'm going to start dropping every penny that I can into the stock market. If it's for the long term, that's fantastic. If it's for the short term, recognize that we're sitting at market highs. Be a little cautious. Recognize that things do not go straight up forever. We're probably overdue for a little volatility. Don't get caught up in that wave. I know a client of mine wants to drop in money that he has to owe someone in 12 months, and he's trying to invest it and then hopefully make money and then cash it out and pay it in 12 months. I think it's a terrible idea. Just recognize we're kind of hitting the point of some euphoria in the market, which is good cause for concern. And fourth is it's always easiest to have a plan up front. And that's where this irregular cash flow topic comes in. So what I try and do in my household is I have priority lists set. So if there's a bonus check, if there's Christmas money, if just got a tax return, that sort of stuff, my wife and I have a list of priorities of here is where money's going to go when extra cash flow comes in, right? If it's additional cash flow above our budget, this is where it goes. So it's, hey, you got a bonus check for $2,500. First, I'm going to put, we need to have $500 more in our emergency fund. Perfect. The first 500 goes there. Next is there's $1,000 credit card. Perfect. The next $1,000 goes there. The remaining $1,000 that are in there kind of flows in, covers the next $200 of the treat yourself money, right? It's not a bad thing to have some fun. Make sure that's a reasonable plan that you can live your lifestyle that you want. Some people get so stringent on their financial goals for the long term that they lose the short term or it's not sustainable. So I always encourage, build it into your plan. Schedule, if there's an extra $50 above that, it's a date night or something like that. The next is, okay, the kids' 529 accounts need $400. And then after that, there's a low interest student loan. The balance is $1,900, but there's only $400 left here. And so $400 is going towards that principal. And then that will remain on the list, right? So each time that there's an excess of cash flow, it goes into this priority list, and we kind of set the priority list. So once all of this was done, we would say, okay, that was great. That took care of this month. Now, if we have extra cash flow again, then we'll go back through and kind of clean things up and say, well, that's crossed off and this is crossed off and this is crossed off. So let's move in X, Y, or Z. Just something to keep in mind. It's a lot easier to make good decisions when you're planning for it ahead of time. So where do we go from here? How do we implement that? Start with the basics. So these are the cornerstone, the 4 things that most experts are saying great things to start off with extra money, keeping things afloat, an emergency fund, your revolving debt there, and anytime that there's free money on the table, great things to be investing in. After that, use your goals as a compass, right? Recognize, okay, what are my top priorities? Make sure that I'm funding those in that order. Find ways to reduce friction. So that's reducing tax friction, or just using things like that irregular cash flow form. Find ways to make it really easy to do the good behaviors. I'm always a fan of if you can automate positive behaviors, if you can automate a savings account, automate your 401k, automate paying extra on your mortgage, that sort of stuff. Great ways to reduce friction. And 4th is having a plan ahead of time. Pretty self-explanatory. So last and most importantly, as always, is thank you. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Thank you for the business and trust that you're placing with me and with all of Sage Rutty. We certainly do not take that lightly. Again, I'm Craig Gingerich, a certified financial planner, a certified 401k professional, among other things here at Sage Rutty. Has my contact info on screen. That's my direct office phone, my direct email. Please feel free to reach out if you have any financial planning questions. Always happy to help. It's one of the benefits that comes along with the relationship through Sage Rutty. If you are looking for more information, if you're looking for some of the prior episodes, if you wanted to learn about Roth IRAs or HSAs or any of the other topics, I think we're on number 18 or 19. Go to our website, sagerutty.com/401k or sagerutty401k.com. Click on the articles and resources, and it has access to all of the telecasts. So you can go back and rewatch them, and hopefully that'll be valuable. Or if you don't have time for that, there's a PDF that just highlights each of the bullet points in each of them. So you have a 1-pager. Oh, this is what I needed to know on pre-tax versus Roth. Great, I have to print the 1 page instead of listening to Craig ramble on for 15 to 18 minutes. So again, thank you. Happy to take any questions. I'm going to stop the recording here, but again, I appreciate your time and your business.